And then we have from compliance to commitment, unlocking lean with vision and values. That's with Mike Chaput. Mike, Matt, welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Thanks, Misha. And welcome, everybody. Very pleased to introduce our next guest, Mike Chaput. He is the co-founder and CEO of Endsight, a California-based IT services provider with 150 employees. Since founding the company in 2004, Mike has built a values-driven organization that's discovered lean principles were essential to sustainable growth. And he's developed a vision where vision and values act as an operating system that allows lean to take root. So I'll hand the keys over to Mike.
Well, thank you, Matthew, and just a real sincere expression of gratitude to everybody who's watching this from near and far. It means the world to me to be able to be here with you all and to share a little bit of my story. And you won't be seeing any slides, and so you probably all got a lot of screen time today. And um, I have this kind of unique story. I turned 50 this year, and I started my entrepreneurship journey when I was 24 years old. My college roommate and we borrowed, and it's unbelievable. I got to reasonably condense it, but we borrowed $1 million with a small business administration loan. We borrowed approximately $350,000 from the sellers, and we put a quarter million of our own hard-earned money that we both squirreled away diligently and lucked into, and we actually had some friends and family money as well. And the day that was January of 2000, and about 3 months later, the dot-com bubble crashed, which was in the center of the commercial market where we played. And we faced a bankruptcy pretty much every month for 4.5 years before finally going bankrupt at 28, both corporately and professionally. And then we launched the company that we both still run together today. So we've been with each other since our college roommate days, and we're still together now. Endsight, which we launched in 2004, is been on the Inc. 5000 10 times. We employ approximately 150 workers, and we do IT services. So we're the IT department for our clients, and it's just been a huge success. And I want to walk you through kind of a couple things I learned about vision and values, and maybe challenge a couple of the major thought leaders out there. And of course, I want to connect it to lean. And when I was 24 years old and I got that big loan and I was a CEO, just to put it in perspective, I had never managed a single person. All of a sudden, I was a CEO. The company was small. I think we had 15 people, but I never managed a single person. I had never sold a contract before. I didn't know how to read a financial report. It was kind of crazy that we were able to last as long as we did. And one of the things, I was watching Meredith's presentation. I saw all those books in the background, and that sure connected with me because I want to say for sure I started doing audiobooks on the commute. I read an audiobook once a week, it was about 8 hours per book, and I was just chewing through them on the road on sales calls to and from the office. And I read a book and met a person here in San Francisco where we're located. His name is Vern Harnish, and some of you may have heard of him. He wrote a book called The Rockefeller's Habit 2.0, or Rockefeller's Habit and Rockefeller's 2.0. He's got a firm called Gazelles that does coaching. And he spoke at a YEO event that we were members of at the time. And you're basically filling out this business plan with 5-year targets, 1-year targets, a big, hairy, audacious goal, which I'd heard of because I'd read Jim Collins' Good to Great. You had to put in core values, which I'd also heard of because I'd read Jim Collins' Built to Last. And I was really excited to, try to do this work. And I didn't understand why it was supposed to work or what it was. That took years, and I didn't understand how to troubleshoot it. Like, we didn't know which parts of the thing to fill out first. We didn't know whether we should, how to do it, nothing. But we couldn't afford a consultant, so we just kept reading the book over and over again, looking at it. And what we were doing ultimately, and what many of you probably have done with either the Vision Traction Organizer in EOS, or maybe some of you are Pat Lencioni fans and you've looked at the Advantage, or maybe some of you know Rockefeller's Habits, or maybe some of you guys are using lean tools to develop your vision statements. But I remember reading Jim Collins and he was saying that value should last the lifetime of the leader. And he got this data from the Built to Last study, all these incredibly successful companies. And that's the main point I want to challenge. And I want to start today's speech by just saying, whatever your values are now, I really believe you should be willing and open to reconsider them and iterate them and along with your strategy. Your business strategy and your values are your two tools. Your business strategy is your vision, and your values is your operating system on how you execute the vision. And if you lock your values in stone and take so much pride in them and ownership in them and connection to them that you're not willing to go back and try to improve them, you're leaving your most important tool unavailable to you to grow. And then at the end of the presentation, I'll tell a few more stories. I'm going to offer what I believe makes for a great set of values so that you might have some tools to go back and look at your values and say, hey, could these be better? And how could we make them better? And how might they accelerate? So we had values really early on. We actually had values in the first company that did go bankrupt. And one of the values, which sounds like it's going to be fine, like I'm going to tell you the value and you'll be like, that sounds cool. I might like that. I might like a work environment. I read this book called Fish. It was basically fish with an exclamation point, and it was about these fishmongers that worked at this Pike Place, Seattle fish market. Maybe some of you have read this book, but if you hadn't, it's a tourist destination where people go and they buy fish, but these workers are like slugging fish around, they're singing, and they really enjoy their job. They work with like the job's not fun at all. It's in the Seattle cold, and they're working with stinky fish, but they love the job. And the main premise of the book is choose your attitude, and enjoy your work. And we were inspired by that. And we also did this exercise that Vern Harnish, the first business planning tool that we used. He had this tool called a life raft, and the idea there was you were to grab your best employees, past and present, or maybe your founders, and you were to kind of brainstorm their characteristics and then kind of see if any of them matched up, and then you draw circles around those characteristics, and that would be the essence for your values. And so we did that too. And what we found was that the founders, Josh and I, along with our senior leaders, the most important people at the company, all had a great sense of humor. And so we thought, I wonder if we could sandwich the idea of fish and the idea of the sense of humor trait that we noticed from our people and create a value. And the value was have a sense of humor and take enjoyment from the day. And that might not seem that scary to anybody here in this room, but it turns out that that was a huge cultural problem. And the antidote was eventually to change that value and to come up with a new value. And I didn't understand what the problem was until much, much later. And it really connects to the reason we're all here is our shared interest in lean. I first started reading Edwards Deming in I want to say like 2008, 2009. So a little bit journey. We did bankruptcy in 2004, and we launched Endsight right after. Like if that was an insane thing to do, I don't know. If that wasn't an insane thing to do, I don't know what's insane. You have a failed business. You clearly, or I clearly didn't have the capabilities to keep that business alive. And instead of going back to the corporate environment, we just decided, let's try again. And we did. And it was a struggle at the first, but we started to lock on. We found a kind of a niche in the IT service market that was emerging right there in around 2005. And this is the IT service model that we're currently in. And I went back to business school because I just knew there was more to learn. And so I did an executive MBA program at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business, and they had a partnership with the Columbia Business School. And my operations teacher, Sarah Beckman, introduced us to a bunch of lean concepts. And that's how I first got introduced to lean. And that led me to some readings by Edwards Deming. And Edwards Deming is famous for his 14 points of management. And one of them stuck out to me, and it was drive fear out of the workplace. And it kind of hit me. There wasn't like we were like really aggressive managers or anything, but one part of our culture was we had this rubber chicken, and we thought it was funny. And when people made a mistake, we'd go hang the chicken on their cubicle. And And we just thought it was funny and goofy and a funny way of trying to encourage people not to think harder about what they're doing. And we also had a value, by the way, called take pride in your work, which was another problem, but I'm going to still focus on this have a sense of humor one. So we thought it was humorous, and we thought it was kind of a humorous way to kind of poke fun at people's mistakes. And what was happening in our culture was unintentionally, we were doing exactly what Edwards Deming knew was wrong. Nobody wanted the chicken. They didn't want that embarrassment or shame. And even though it was kind of funny to everybody else, to the person who was getting the chicken, it was embarrassing. And so they did exactly what Demings suggested, which was everybody started to cover up work. And one of the tenets of lean, as everybody watching probably already knows, is that you need to make work visible. So the value of have a sense of humor while on the surface seems benign. It was actually malignant. And as we read, these it's amazing to be in the company, but of all these like lean grandfathers. But as we started leaning Toyota way and lean thinking, and I saw James Womack was here, and we started to realize that under the hood, the engine behind lean is really respect for people. It was always respect for people, and it wasn't encoded in our value stack. And it wasn't clear inside of our value stack. And I knew the value stack was wrong. And so what we had to do was go against the advice of Collins that values need to last the lifetime of the leader. And we had to go against several other kind of conventional wisdom. So many leaders is like, well, this is kind of who I am. So the values are going to be derived at the founder. The truth is, if I'm honest with more than 1,000 people watching this all across the globe, is I'm not like a particularly respectful guy. Like that's it's not like my core essence. I'm just as prone to be frustrated and provoked as anybody. I would hate for anybody in my company to see me on my worst day at an airport when they wouldn't let me on my flight when the plane was sitting right there and they gave away my seat as I was running from another plane because they were late to get me to the airport. I've done all that, and so it's not about me. Like the respect isn't like it flows from me as the leader. Respect is the principle that's going to help us win in the marketplace. Respect is going to make life great for our people. Respect is necessary for us to hit our vision and our targets. So I need to change. Not the entire company needs to change to accommodate my natural disposition. That's ridiculous. So we needed to change our value stack. And because we weren't so prideful about it, we were able to go back in and retool. Um, we had it, I want to say 3 years where our company kind of stuck at right around $8 million of total revenue. It was like 8 million, 8.2, 8.4, and we couldn't break it. I actually started to tell myself a narrative that it wasn't even possible in our marketplace. Our marketplace is very competitive and there's very low barrier to entry. And we, at that time, it was like all principle based selling. Just to give you everybody an idea, we're 35 million now, and we're more than 4 times the size of wherever we got stuck. So it wasn't the market, and it wasn't a sales model. It was the leader, and it was the business model, and it was the culture, and we needed to change that in order to get unstuck. So I want to share a few things about values that I've come to really believe and really understand on how to make them good, and a little bit about vision, and ironically they're kind of the same. So a great vision has something at the pinnacle of it. It sits at the very top. So I like the word superordinate. We always think about subordinate. So, like a subordinate employee on an org chart. So then, you can think about superordinate. Well, what's superordinate? What's at the very top of the vision? What's the most important? And that, of course, is what Jim Collins called your big, hairy, audacious goal. And one of the ironic things about vision is that a lot of people, they say things like, oh, the goal needs to be a stretch goal, but achievable. The funny thing is, goals that are ambitious will generate the energy necessary to achieve them. Weak goals, they don't inspire anybody. So you have to have a BHAG that's inspirational, that brings people together and forces you to change and adapt to it. Once you establish that big, hairy, audacious target, then everything you do s- has to change in order to accommodate it. Maybe even the leader has to change, or maybe you have to change as a leader to accommodate it. Maybe your capital strategy needs to change. Maybe your business and marketing and go-to-market and product stack needs to change. But everything is subordinate to the superordinate position if we're going to achieve this goal no matter what. And on the other side, the values are the instruction sets. If we behave this way and everybody behaves this way, then we will manifest that goal. So the first thing about a great value stack is that it's aligned with the strategy. In a lean-oriented operational business strategy, if respect isn't a part of it, I would argue it's not going to be possible to manifest that quality strategy. So that was the first thing we had to fix. But there's more to it. So let's break it down. At Endsight, we have our values start with something very, very simple. It's 4 letters, and they're easy to remember. If people don't know the values, they can't possibly come alive in your organization. So for Endsight, it's RSVP. Anybody who's ever made a reservation at a restaurant can remember the 4 letters. It takes nothing to remember. Everybody at our company remembers it. But even though it's easy to remember, it doesn't mean anything. There's no interacting with it. But that's the most distilled version of the values, and it sits at the highest spot of the value stack. Below that, each letter stands for 2 words. R stands for respect and connect. S stands for servant's heart. V stands for value. And P stands for progress over comfort. Okay, so now just 2 words, they start to mean a little bit something. I mean, if I say respect and connect, you can kind of understand what I mean, but maybe you can't completely understand it. And servant's heart, yeah, I'm starting to get what that means. It's a service orientation, but it's still not quite as clear as it should be. Each value has about 5 bullets that are phrased in a we believe statement. And a great example of this is under the servant's heart value, there's a bullet that says, we believe that a leader's purpose is to serve their team so that team members can serve customers and each other. And this defines service leadership, but it doesn't define it perfectly. So beneath that bullet, there's a whole book. There's a book called The Motive by Pat Lencioni, who I already mentioned once on this call, and a thought leader who's written about 8 amazing books. If you haven't read them and are looking for book recommendations, go hit up Pat. But if you're going to be a leader at Endsight, you have to be familiar with that book. Like you're not even on a leadership track if you don't know it, because you don't understand culturally what we've created. So what we have is 4 values, about 20 bullets. And then underneath those bullets, we have a library. There's more than 20 books that constitute those bullets. So for example, the concept of connection isn't random. There's a book by Kim Scott called Radical Candor, where she talks about how great accountability is born from great connection. If you just try to do accountability as a boss with no connection with your person, with the person you're managing or leading, she calls that obnoxious aggression. And if you only have the connection, she calls that what does she call that? Ruinous empathy. But great accountability is born from a great personal connection, and that makes work life better and that makes community better. So our respect and connect values are a nod to both kind of the lean culture of respect for people, but also part of the literature and library that makes Endsight special, the thinkers behind the leaders that make our culture. And so I think your values need to be deep as well. They need to be rooted in great philosophical principles. And they need to be, of course, aligned with strategy. So they have to be accessible and memorable. That's where these mnemonics come from in these short 2 words. Then they have to be clear, which means they have to have great meaning. People need to understand what they are and why they're there. And then they have to be deep. They have to be rooted in great philosophical principles. And so I would challenge everybody to go, hey, are mine those things? Do they have all those attributes? And if they don't, free yourself from whatever idea you may have had saying, no, these are it. This is it. These are our values and they're great and they're amazing. It's like, if they're great and amazing and you're accomplishing all of your business objectives, I agree, leave them alone. I think ours are great. They're very well adopted. And if that's the case, hopefully I have a couple ideas for you. You have great values. They're clear, they're deep, they're based in philosophical principles. They're easy to remember. Everybody engages with them. I thought I'd share a few stories about the way that we bring these values to life. Because if they're just on our website, then that's not going to be helpful. So the first thing is we recruit with them. When we bring in a new employee for an interview, we don't even check for their technical capabilities until after we check for culture. And the way that we do that is we ask them about their life. We ask them about their childhood of origin. We ask what teachers they love. What do they love about their parents? What bothered them about their parents? What do they struggle with and why? What do they love about previous jobs and bosses and coaches? What do they hate about those previous jobs and bosses and coaches? And by getting to know them, we start to understand what their personal values are, and we can see if they're going to align with ours. Things like progress over comfort. Do they pay attention to their mindset and lean into difficult things and take joy in hard work? Because if they don't, if that's not a thing that they can demonstrate, in their personal life, they're going to be unincluded. And if they're not willing to share about themselves, then they're not going to be part of our authenticity and vulnerability, which is discussed in our respect and connect values. And then only after we figure out whether that they can express a great version of themselves here at Endsight, only then will we check for their technical capabilities. And then we hire them predisposed to be in alignment with these values. I orient every group of employees in a cohort where we literally read through each of the bullets. I ask them what it means to them. They go in order in a round circle. And then I tell them about the philosophers and the authors and the leadership, that why we chose these values and what they mean to us and where they came from and what they look like live in action. And we spend hours doing that. It's more than a 2-hour meeting usually. And that signals that the CEO will talk to every single employee in that level of detail, how important these things are. And it doesn't stop there. We have 2 meetings per quarter. The meetings start with something called the Wheel of Awesome. Already today, there was, probably 3 or 4 emails of people recognizing each other for executing according to the values. It usually looks something like when somebody does something that they really appreciate, they recognize them publicly, and they get a ticket to the Wheel of Awesome. And then during the company meetings, we hand out prizes. Usually it's not anything huge, it's not economically motivated, but it's usually like logo swag, Endsight fleece or something like that, a hat. And they get those on the Wheel of Awesome, and they get recognized again in front of all their peers. So we start every meeting with that, and then we end every single meeting with value stories. And a story is something where we tell a hero's journey about an employee who exhibited the value. Usually we reveal who the employee is at the very end after you hear the ridiculously cool thing that they did. And everybody cheers like crazy. And we even begin all of our like weekly managers meeting with something called good news. And good news is basically just people who are doing great things at the company. And then if you hear that as a leader, if I ever hear that, I usually go on to our team's channel and I send that employee to say, hey, I heard this story in the managers meeting, and I'm just really happy to have you on the team and really cool. And thanks for your effort. And that kind of recognition gives people meaning and purpose in their lives and work, and they feel great about that. Maybe they show their family or friends, and it means a lot to people to be seen. And so, and that keeps bringing the values to the forefront of our culture. So, values aren't just well, they're not just for a wall. Like they have to be embedded and entrenched in your business processes, or they won't work. And we have a really short time, and we're down to 5 minutes, so I didn't really get to do a deep dive into vision. But I just want to say one thing. Um, People work for play. They play. Like, I always give this example. I used to play Minecraft with my kids when they were younger. They're 18 and 22 now, but when they were younger, and we'd go into the world and it wasn't any fun until we assigned ourselves a job. Let's build a tower. And once we said, let's build a tower, everybody had a job. I had to collect bricks. You had to do all this work, and the work was what was fun. And what makes it fun is you have a clear goal, and that goal is exciting, and everybody's into it, and they want to manifest it. And that's what your vision is. And your vision can't just be a big BHAG, like a set of architectural plans. It's got to have detail all the way down to the color of the wall. Your electrical plan has everything from the lighting fixtures and switches on the wall. And your business plan can't just be this distilled one-page thing. It needs to be that too, because you need to be able to communicate it quickly and bucket it and distill it up. But you have to unpack it down so that everybody knows what they have to do in order to manifest your plan. And there's a method for this. And of course, I'm out of time. I got 5 minutes left, and I'd love to see if anybody has some questions. So I'm going to take a break here and let Matthew see if he has any questions from the chat.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, if anybody has questions for Mike, be sure to throw them in the Q&A there. I'll kick things off, Mike. That was a great story about your kind of transformation as a leader from a young 24-year-old to where you are today. What would you say is sort of what the biggest change you've had to make about about yourself in that journey? So much it seems has changed.
Well, I have this could be a whole 15-minute answer, but I'm going to try to keep it really condensed. Um, I've talked to so many people who are founder entrepreneurs, and so many of them have, I just want to call it as a bucket, some childhood trauma, like something that they were like chasing, or, like maybe they wanted to prove something to their dad,
Mm,
or maybe they were trying to chase safety, financial or otherwise, or they wanted to like to protect their, I think as a leader, if you really want to inspire people, you have to transcend your childhood trauma to a much bigger source of motive, much more idealistic. You have to remove the barriers for people to follow you. You're never going to get 150 people to sign up to your vision so that you can prove something to your dad or achieve safety. They don't care about that. They want to do something that matters, that's impactful, that helps other people. And it's got to be authentic in your heart. Because if it's not, then you'll betray that subtly in ways that you can't imagine. You'll get bad news and your face will act some way, and it's just like you actually have to believe it in your heart. So when you could transcend the things going on, that were maybe they motivated you to get to where you were, like maybe you would have never started a business if you didn't have that thing that you were running from or whatever. But that run from energy isn't gonna attract people to the next destination in times. So I see a lot of entrepreneurs stall out because they don't transition their fuel source.
mm,
They're stuck on a negative energy fuel source, and they need to transition to a positive energy fuel source and get that wind at their back. And I'd
mm,
say, so for me, a big thing was really transitioning to an idealistic vision that can include winning across a whole bunch of people, and it isn't about me. It's about the team, and it's about the vision, and it's about the mission, and I'm just a follower of the vision and values. I'm the first follower. So you can think of the leader as not, it's not everybody's not following a leader. It's everybody's following a vision and value statement, and the leader is the
mm,
first follower.
mm. Oh, we have just a minute left here. If you could give people, you mentioned so many great resources for people to read and learn from. If you could give people just one, what would you recommend them?
Oh man, it really just
30
one.
seconds. Quick question.
Um, Boy, I just don't know if I could answer that. I mean, I think everybody needs a business planning system.
Hmm.
And if you start with some business planning system, and I don't care whether it's Gino Wickman's EOS, or whether it's Vern Harnish's Rockefeller Habits, or Pat Lencioni has one called The Advantage, but you need to have a rhythm. You need to have core values, but you also have to have a rhythm for setting financial targets, business objectives, rocks, all that kind of stuff. I mean, without that, it's just chaos and disorganized.
Mm,
And if you try to follow one of these business planning systems, it's like the trouble figuring out, well, what's the right rhythm, and at what level do we meet, and at what level should the goals be? That's where a lot of learning
Mike,
begins.
thank you so much.